One of the most common questions that I get from people who are wanting to lose weight and do keto is, what do I eat? And they're looking for me to tell them what I ate, right? Just give me a list. And I'm hesitant. Until today, I've been hesitant to say, this is what you should do. Because I actually found something that answers the biggest question I've always struggled with, which is this. I can tell you what I eat, but well, now that I look at how Pat eats and how my kids eat, I've realized I'm a boring eater. And you might not like to eat what I eat or want to eat what I eat because I'm a boring eater. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to get answers that will suit your food desires and make the perfect meal plan for you.
What we're going to do is we're going to use our computer and we're going to go to ChatGPT. We're going to type in some questions. The computer will give you answers. And I want to say two things. We need to understand this is a tool. If I ask it the right questions, it will give me the answers that are in line with what I'm trying to accomplish. I want to give you some questions you can ask the chat to be able to get the meal plan that works best for you to get you started on a keto lifestyle.
The computer doesn't know who I am, so it doesn't know what my tastes are like. The computer also doesn't know what kind of diet I eat. So the first thing I need to do is tell the computer some parameters, because I want it to know that I'm trying to do a keto diet. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the computer never gives me a meal that maxes out my entire day in one meal.
Okay, so the first thing I'm asking ChatGPT to do is to suggest 10 meals that have 10 grams of carbs or less. And I've told it that I'm trying to do a keto diet. And I also asked it to use only whole foods. Actually, I'm looking at the results right now and I'm pretty happy with this. I've got grilled chicken with roasted vegetables, bunless burger with avocado and tomato, shrimp and broccoli stir fry. So everything that is listed so far, I would be able to eat on a keto diet. I don't actually see anything that is not theoretically going to fall in line with a keto diet. And it gives me a little blurb that says, remember to include healthy fats such as avocado, olive oil, and coconut oil in your meals to help keep you satisfied. It's also a good idea to include source of protein in each meal to help muscle maintenance and repair. I hope these ideas help. Actually, it's quite friendly. I love that. Although it gave 10 really amazing ideas, what if I want to have more variety? So I'm going to just ask it to suggest 10 more. Okay, what I find interesting in the second set of meals that was suggested, the first one comes up with quinoa. Now, for sure, we can include quinoa, rice, any kind of grain in a well-formulated keto diet. But the problem that I have is that it might end up eating up a lot of our carbohydrates for the day. The second hesitation is that the second food is giving me tofu, and I would have preferred that we were using animal protein sources. One of the things I want you to think about when you're asking the ChatGPT to create a meal plan for you is that it's following exactly the directions that you gave. I actually didn't tell it to only use animal protein, so it gave me an option that used plant protein. And now it says, remember to vary your protein sources and incorporate a variety of vegetables in your meals to ensure that you're getting a wide range of nutrients. So here we go, where we have the chat giving us a piece of information that if you're new to keto, you might think, wow, I need to have a wide variety of vegetables for nutrients. That's not 100% accurate from what we're learning from the doctors that are talking about, for example, all the people that live a carnivore lifestyle, and that they're very healthy. There's many doctors that talk about doing carnivore without organ meats, and people are fine. But if you're worried about vitamins and minerals, organ meats are a great way to get those in. It also says it's a good idea to include healthy fats such as avocado, olive oil, and nuts to help keep yourself satisfied, which that part is absolutely reality. And it helps your body to absorb important vitamins and minerals. So those fat-soluble vitamins and minerals.
There are some people that I've spoken to who have trouble with meats, whether it's they don't eat pork or they don't eat red meat. I started my journey off with keto, not eating red meats because I don't eat red meats because I have an allergy. So right away, that's a lot of meat off the table. And so it's going to be really interesting looking at the Chat GPT. Can I customize this to make a meal plan that would actually work for me? As you saw so far, there's a lot of suggestions, but red meats are on the list. Let's see if we can customize this to be something that I actually could use. So a meal plan that would work for me, that avoid nightshades. We're making it harder, right? Because I want to make it hard because I want to see if any person walking into the store would be able to sit down in front of this program and get a meal plan that works.
I gave it the instruction to exclude red meats and exclude nightshade vegetables. So on the meat side, it gave me grilled chicken, baked salmon, turkey, shrimp, grilled lamb. So lamb chops, I'm pretty sure that's a red meat. Tuna, baked chicken, grilled shrimp, and turkey meatballs. So there was one red meat in there. And then on the vegetable side, I said no nightshade vegetables. Egg salad with avocado, lettuce, and tomato. That's a nightshade. So it gave me one of each. That was a mistake. Now, the nice thing is that you can tell ChatGPT that it made a mistake. I apologize for the mistake. Egg salad with avocado, lettuce, and cucumber. Number 6 was grilled lamb chops, and it was replaced with grilled fish. So we did get some good corrections. What I do notice that I find interesting here is I asked it not to give red meat. It gave me lamb, but it didn't give me pork, which is a white meat. So we could go back in and customize this a little more. I want to see if when it gives me the 10 more dishes, if it's going to remember not to give me red meat, like so other red meats, and if it's going to remember not to give me nightshade vegetables. And it's very interesting to me that at the end of every one, it gives a little blurb of information. Actually, it gave me only pork recipes, which is very interesting. But if you were looking for 10 pork recipes, this is great. I could do 10 pork recipes, 10 chicken recipes. So that's an interesting way to do it too. Now, what I find kind of cool there is that if I keep pork constant, then what I'm really getting is a bunch of side dishes. I actually love this because I feel like what it does is it opens a story where rather than trying to like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I could just take the meats that I already know that I love and then put it in and say, give me 10 recipes with this kind of meat. I could probably even have gone further and said, give me 10 pork chop recipes and see what it would have done. How would it have varied that? That's really cool.
It really does let me customize the meats I already know I like to eat, or the meats that I can tolerate. For example, like I said, I can't eat red meats. So it's kind of interesting because I feel like what I've just done is hopefully helped all of you to see that finding a meal plan, which is basically a list of meals that you can make, isn't that difficult. But what's even more interesting to me is uh, some of you might remember that my dad is a chef. And one of the things that he taught me when I was first going to restaurants was never order chicken on the menu. It's the cheapest meat to get, and it's a waste of your money. The second thing he taught me was it's more worth it to go to a higher end restaurant because at a higher end restaurant, the focus on the plate is the meat. Lower end restaurants, the focus on the plate are the side dishes. And what he explained to me is the reason that they do that is because they're trying to fill you up on the cheapest stuff so that you don't notice that you didn't get a lot of the expensive stuff, which is the meat. Wellness Warrior, I want you to put it in the comments below. Do you run your kitchen like a cheap restaurant or an expensive restaurant? Is the main thing on your plate a bunch of rice, a bunch of pasta, a bunch of salad, a bunch of vegetables? Or is the main thing on your plate, the thing that's actually filling you up, the meat? When my dad and I were having this conversation, it really helped me to understand why I feel so great today. Because I'm eating meat most of the time. And if I have a little veg, it's a little veg. I haven't had grains in over 4 years. Why? They're unnecessary. They're not giving my body anything of use. So I want you to think about that. Restaurants are there to make money, and they make them more money by getting people to be so happy over how delicious those fries are, when in fact what they should be focused on is the meat. And you'd be surprised how many times I've been watching shows and people are raving about the fries. They're crisp, they're delicious, they're They're the cheapest thing on the plate. Blows my mind. Let's see what specific recipes we can get from the chat. So I'm going to go in that list. Maybe we'll start one of those pork ones and get it to give me an actual recipe.
The two meals on the list that seem the most interesting to me are the pork and spinach omelet and the pork meatballs with a side of steamed green beans. In order to get this recipe, what I would ask the chat is give me a recipe for number 5 with the serving sizes, list of ingredients with amounts, and the carb, protein, and fat amounts per serving. First of all, the recipe starts off with 1 pound of ground pork. So depending on where you are in your journey, I'm just looking at the fact that it's 1 pound of ground pork. So I could see maybe a pound of ground pork serving 2 people, but this recipe says 4. So right away, that's making me feel like it's very light on the amount of protein. However, I'm also thinking from the perspective of somebody that eats 1 meal a day. So if you eat twice a day, then this might be totally fine for you. So I need to keep that in mind as I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this for myself, obviously, but it's also, can you replicate these things? What the ingredients gave, and again, this chat is supposed to be keeping in mind everything that was said before. This is a conversation we're having back and forth, right? So in the ingredients, do I see any nightshades? No, that's amazing. So it stuck to what it was supposed to do. I mean, the actual recipe, ground pork, egg, Parmesan cheese, like it all looks very typical to me. I don't see anything that stands out. 1 pound of green beans gives a net carb total of 21. That could work. 21 divided by 4. That could work. Let's see what it ends up telling me the whole meal will be. Because that's the only carb in the, well, that's the majority of the carb in the meal. It's actually saying that the only carbs are coming from the green beans, which, so wellness warriors, this is one of the things that we need to do when we're doing this type of work, is looking at the outcome of what it's telling you. And I understand this is someone starting off and saying, well, I don't know what to eat. And this recipe, with me looking at it and seeing that there's a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, so there's carb in that. Minced garlic, it's not a lot, but there's carb in that. Parsley, it's not a lot, but there's carb in that. Oregano, again, not a lot, but there's carb in that. And then, of course, we have those beans. And it's in the answer, it says there's 4 grams of carbs from the green beans. What I will say is that maybe it's 5, but it's still well below the 10 that I asked it to make the meal for. So this is amazing to me. And I still feel that anybody could start a keto diet using this kind of recipe and do really well. It's 20 grams of protein. Again, considering that in this scenario, you're eating 2 to 3 times a day, 20 grams of protein is going to be fine. And the fat content is 22 grams. Again, making the assumption that you're eating 2 to 3 times a day, you're going to get more fat other points in the day. That also sounds fine to me. Good, let's try the pork and spinach omelet. Even though I didn't ask for it, it did give me the meal size and the nutrition information. So one thing I will say about this recipe is that it says it serves 2 people. So 4 eggs, a 1/4 pound of pork, which means you're getting 1/8 of a pound of pork and 2 eggs. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd have to try it to see how filling it is. There's also heavy cream in there. So I'd have to try to see how filling it is. It's giving you 25 grams of fat, which sounds good. It's from the olive oil and cheese. Did they cook that in olive oil? So, long story. One thing I will say is we are often being asked to cook with olive oil, even though medically we've been advised not to cook with olive oil. That olive oil is a oil that's best used cold, so in salads, etc. And especially in this situation, this is a pork dish. Pork usually releases fat. So unless this was a lean piece of pork, which I don't know why we would do that, but maybe a tenderloin piece is a lean piece of pork, and that might be something I'm learning right now, I would not suggest that. Most of the time when you cook pork, it renders fat, and then you can use that fat to cook whatever else you're cooking. And if you have a lean piece of pork, then I would probably encourage you to go with an avocado oil or even a coconut oil. But olive oils are not great for cooking with. So again, this is why I'm suggesting that these are great jump off points for recipes. The ChatGPT is going to give you interesting ideas. It doesn't necessarily know all the healthy medical things we're supposed to be doing. And so therefore, I want you to kind of look at that with a grain of salt. Now, the other thing that I'm going to say as I go back down here, so we have 2 grams of carbs from the onions, it's saying. And when I look at the ingredients, is that the only place we're going to get? It's a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. So we're getting some sugar from the heavy cream as well. Probably about, I want to say 2 grams. Is there any other place that there's, the garlic again is going to have some carb, and so is the spinach going to have some carb. 1 cup of spinach is not a lot, but it's still there. And the cheese again is going to have some carb. So this chat is not giving you, now what, I wonder what will happen if we ask it. It apologized obviously and said it was 3 grams of carb now when it included the spinach. And it says it's important to keep an eye on daily intake of all macronutrients, which is an important part of the ketogenic diet. The dish provided a good balance of protein, healthy fats, and low amount of carbs. Please keep in mind that these numbers are estimates and may vary on the specific ingredients and brands you use. It's always good to check the label. So there was an extra gram there, which is what I was guesstimating. So yeah, 25 grams of fat for that meal and 24 grams of protein. What we can see here is that none of the meals had any nightshades in them, in those ingredient lists. So nothing that would compromise my ability to eat them. This was with pork. I could do the same thing with chicken. Another thing that you could do is you could ask the chat, I want to make this specific thing. So for example, let's say I want to make lasagna. Can you give me an ingredients for keto lasagna? What I think is cool about this is that if you happen to be craving something, at least there's a possibility that you might get an idea of how to make it with good ingredients. I haven't done it. I'm doing it right now, but we're going to see together. Is the chat able to give me a keto lasagna? It's writing and it's giving me ingredients. So let's see. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but sometimes the chat will be typing something and it will just stop writing. But if you write continue, it will keep finishing off what it's saying. I think there's maybe, because this is free, there's a limited amount that you can type out in one shot before it stops typing. There's 2 things I want to point out here that I thought was really cool about this lasagna. It does say, here's a recipe that is keto friendly that uses zucchini or eggplant instead of traditional pasta. So it almost feels like to me, it forgot that I'm nightshade. Like I said, no nightshade, right? Because eggplant is a nightshade. But then when I go down, okay, it said ground beef or pork. So again, it's forgetting that I said no red meats. The chat is supposed to remember your previous chat. And I'm just chatting in a string here. It's supposed to remember your previous chats of the day. So it doesn't remember your history, but it remembers it of the day. So like these are things you need to look out for, because you will definitely need to double check that all the ingredients that it gives you are in line with the keto lifestyle. What I will point out here is that it's often giving recipes. I see tomatoes in here too. Like it's giving recipes that I do believe if added up together is going to fall below what would be considered into keto numbers. It also depends on what size like how many people it tells you that this serves. So 6 to 8 people. It didn't give me didn't give me the nutrient breakdown though. Like, okay, so it's saying 7 grams of carb from the zucchini. Again, interesting. It's ignoring all the other ingredients that were carb. So this is again where I want to caution you. One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of times the chat GPT acts as if the carbs from vegetables don't count. They do. I would take these recipes and I would put them in Chronometer or whatever app you're using to track your food. So in Chronometer, it has a recipe section where you can input a recipe and then it does the calculations for you. And then you'll know for a serving based on those numbers, that's how much you can have. And I used to use that a lot when I first started because it helped me to know what I was like, when I took a serving of whatever I made, how much carb was in it. What I would typically do is every time I made a dish, I would just jump into Chronometer and just tell it how much of each ingredient I had. So I would change those numbers and say, apply it to future meals. And then for that meal that I took that day, then I would know, okay, this is exactly how much I had. It helped me because obviously every time you make a dish, maybe you're going to have 1 pound of meat this time. The next time you have 1.5 pounds of meat. Maybe the one time you had 3/4 of a pound of meat. And so like, and the same thing with the vegetable, maybe those 2 zucchinis were 100 grams each this time. And another time you had really big zucchinis and they were 200 grams each. Well, that's a huge difference. You can't just say 2 zucchinis. So being able to go in and just tell the app exactly how much ingredients you have then allows you to be able to know that you're staying within your keto lifestyle. Now, obviously for this one, I probably would go in and tell the chat, please remember to omit nightshades. Give me a new recipe for keto lasagna. Also, no red meat. So it's giving me the exact same recipe again. I'm going to go in and say tomatoes and eggplants are nightshades. I want to see if I can get it to do it. And again, it gave me tomatoes. The above has tomatoes. I don't know, maybe it just can't do it. So what might be interesting here is that there just might not be a recipe on the internet that doesn't have the tomatoes. And so it keeps giving me a recipe with tomatoes. Whereas where it could do is it could have said there is no recipe without tomatoes, so omit the tomatoes, which would have been an interesting way of putting it. Because if you have specific allergies, there might actually be a recipe on the internet that does take that specific allergy into consideration. And if the chat can find it, it'll give it to you. What I do find interesting is that this recipe that it gave me now is calling for ground turkey or chicken instead of pork. But do I see any tomato? I don't see any tomato. So there's no tomato in this recipe, no tomato sauce, no tomato anything. This recipe serves 6 people. So it was able to do it. I don't know how good this recipe is. Obviously, you have to make it and try. But at least you have a starting point. There's an element here where you have to have some knowledge of what you're trying to accomplish, which is why I am begging you, please, when you get these recipes, put them in a food calculator so that you'll be able to see whether or not the numbers that you got here match what you're getting. So if you put in the food calculator and it said here it's going to be 4 grams of carb per serving, and over there you're seeing 7, well, the food calculator is probably correct, right? Because that's what they do, right? That they gather that information, that data, so that you can know how much grams of carbs are in your food. The point of this is meal ideas. It's not to get the final be all end all. So it maybe you only needed the idea and then you're going to cook it however you want to cook it from your imagination because you like to cook. Or maybe you needed the idea and the recipe, and in which case this is a great way for you to get that.
What's really cool about having the ChatGPT make you a meal plan is that as you progress in this world of keto, your tastes are going to change. And so as your tastes are changing, you will be able to then ask the chat to give you more new ideas for more new things you figured out that you are interested in eating. I can tell you for myself, when I first started on this journey of eating healthy, I hated all things vegetable. And mostly I think that I hated those things because I was so used to eating processed food, and processed foods are so loaded up with salt and sugar that I didn't know what normal food tasted like. I didn't know what vegetables tasted like because I didn't eat them, because they weren't as fun to eat as processed garbage. And I feel like doing this process, well, eating healthy food, helped me to start eating healthy food and appreciating healthy food. It's amazing how when you eat something that gives your body energy and makes you feel good, that you appreciate, that you turn around and actually love it as well. So as you eat healthy and you're less influenced by sugar, there'll be more tastes and flavors that actually appeal to you. And then because those things appeal to you, and you're going to cook them more and want them more, and you're going to progress. I feel like the one thing that I will say that amazes me is 4 years later, going on 5 years later, I'm impressed with myself that I don't miss junk food. I'm impressed with myself that I actually like eating. And so I'm saying that because I feel like I didn't used to like going to fancier restaurants because it was all about what I didn't think was the fun part of the meal, right? There was no French fries on the plate. There's no rice on the plate. And now I realize that, especially after talking to my dad and truly understanding what he was trying to get me to understand, is that that's the cheap part of like, don't be a cheap date, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Treat yourself well. What you're going to eat is only the beginning. I have a video coming out about how to calculate your macros. Not going to want to miss that. So, subscribe. While you're waiting, you can check out this video right here if you want to see what actually happens to someone when they eat keto for 5 months straight. Click on the link. I'll meet you over there.